Are you a human being?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm a human being. That means, usually what that means is we believe a lot of shit that isn't true. We have the idea somewhere within ourselves that, in a lot of ways, imposed by, something completely exterior in the beginning, that there's some way we ought to be that we aren't. And in my view, this is just my opinion, well, first of all, it's not my opinion that I am not a Christian. I grew up a Catholic. I'm not a Christian. I won't go into all that right now. I will say, I appreciate the Ten Commandments. I get that. And I'm fine with all of it. I sort of wish the people who embrace the Ten Commandments would do a little better job. But it's fine. My real problem is with what's underneath the Ten Commandments. And that is judgment. Because judgment is the essence of duality, isn't it? Judgment is where duality begins. So, you brought up hypocrisy. I sort of, in a way, I don't know what that really means. I mean, I understand that it means somebody's asking something of you that they're not willing to do themselves, or they're demanding something of you. But in the context of spirituality, especially in the beginning, we have expectations of ourselves that are inhuman. And in large measure, I think a lot of people, I don't know where I stood in the beginning in that category but let me say, a lot of people strive for things that are not real and not true and not important. And that brings up the issue of hypocrisy until we come to a place where we're mature enough and we let it go. I started doing yoga for one reason, and that's because it felt really good. It felt really good to do yoga. And it was the first time in my life, of course I was only 20, but it was the first time in my life that feeling really good didn't involve drugs and alcohol. And it was the first time in my life when I felt really good and I got up the next day, I still felt really good. And so, I kept doing yoga. And the more deeply I went into it, the better I felt. And the better I felt, the more able I was to be clear about my expectations of myself and clear about in my communication with others. And as time has passed, my understanding has changed. My ability to and the requirements of my practice have changed. My ability to articulate those changes and to even recognize, acknowledge and articulate those changes has lagged the change itself. I've sometimes had experiences in my worldly life that have, sometimes forced me to acknowledge those, recognize those changes, acknowledge and deal with them. And it's all good. So growing really begins with feeling good. Another way of putting it, we call this kundalini yoga. Another thing we could say about it is what we are doing here is we are lifting our spirits. The rising of kundalini means the same thing as lifting our spirits. And that feels really good. And if we kept lifting our spirits every day, if that was our commitment, to lift our spirits no matter what, we come to a place where I think the language that is used often is that we feel divinely good. It's otherworldly good, unbelievably good. And sustaining that good feeling is the good feeling is based on two things. Both things are yoga. My definition of yoga is contact, alignment, and flow. Contact, alignment, and flow. That's what yoga is. It has two dimensions, an inner dimension and an among us dimension. To sustain and deepen that good feeling day by day requires that we practice that contact, that yoga, that contact, alignment, and flow within ourselves and in our daily lives. Keeping that going is going to compel us to be simpler and clearer and kinder and more respectful in our communications with others and in our treatment of ourselves. And then the issue of hypocrisy, which is really an expression of our tension and confusion, dissolves. I don't have any problem with hypocrisy. I don't have any problem with yours, and I don't have any problem with mine. I work on mine every day, you work on yours every day. We'll be good. Right? Okay. But I'm not a Christian and I'm not a Protestant and I don't believe in judgment. What I do really appreciate is diversity among humans. I think that's, first of all, that's our reality, but the second thing is that's our survival. And I really believe that if we're non-dualists, and that's sort of my model. I'll talk to you about that tomorrow. But my model is everything is one thing in its core. And so what that means to me is that every single living being is an expression of that, a demonstration of that one living essence of life itself. And I am compelled, whether I like your cologne or not, to respect you and your choice of wearing cologne, even though I may never. And that's true for me with everyone, including hypocrites. Because creating tension and judgment between ourselves and others builds walls, which are only going to get, if we're really committed to growing, are only going to get in our way. All of the judgment and the hypocrisy that goes on, especially in the spiritual world, in my view, is really about business. It's really about business, and it has nothing to do with anything that we need to be concerned about. So, for myself, I open my own heart every day, and I bring that open heart I make that heart available to every single person I connect with in my day. And whatever their state is, I try to hold that connection until there is a real flow that is established between us. And that has the effect of dissolving tensions and walls and really making the experience of our shared source available to both of us in whatever dynamic activity it is that we are called upon to share. And I also don't want to make judgments about people very much, because who knows where I'm going to be with that person a year from now or 10 years from now. Why build edifices that you'll have to take down later? So, I have one last thing to say on the subject, and then if you have somebody else, I'll change. But my own understanding by now is, I wrote this morning on Facebook, and it's true, but this is really true. And the thing is, I thought it was really, I really liked that I wrote this. I really did. I thought, this is great, and it feels really good to say this, and, people are going to love it. I said, every hard place in our heart, will, when we seek God, every hard place in our heart will eventually become an obstacle in our path. Every hard place. And what that means to me is that my work is to dissolve all the hard places in my heart and to find with everybody that I interact with a flow and kindness and respect and caring. It hardly got any hits at all. Yesterday afternoon, Michelle and I were screwing around while I was getting ready for class, and I did 150 push-ups with my feet up on a bench and posted that. It got like the most hits I've ever gotten in the history of my Facebook delusion. I really am grateful. I am grateful for human teachers. I'm grateful for human teachers. And I try to be a human being with everyone that I am connected with. I am grateful to be a human being and grateful for human teachers, because how in the hell else are we really going to learn about love? Do you think love is about being perfect? If it's about being perfect, then none of us in this room are qualified to talk about love. Ever. I'm not here to be perfect. I am here to dissolve every hard place in my heart and every hard place in every other part of me. And when it is time for this energy vital energy to separate itself from this body, I am here for it to ascend. End of story. The same is true of you. And, the only way we will ever come to understand love in ourselves is by transcending our own judgment of ourselves, and that starts with not judging others. If somebody is confused about something, or somebody is like making creating an expectation that they themselves can't live, you know what we call that? Normal. Right? We call that normal. So, I'm not here to sell you anything, and I don't want your money. I don't do this for money. I've been teaching for 45 years. This fall, I have never done this for money ever. So I'm not selling you nothing, and I'm just available for you to take whatever it is that you can take from me, and I hope you will grow it yourself. I have no expectation, but I have a lot of experience. So, anybody else?
I'm curious, are you celibate as a Swami? Is that part of your path?
God, no.
No.
Well, listen, let me put it to you this way. When I took sannyas in 1978, that topic came up. I thought, okay. Being a good Catholic boy, it seemed reasonable. So about, a year and a half later, I was in Ann Arbor, and I had an ashram in Ann Arbor. Bob used to live there. And across the street from that ashram in Ann Arbor was the City Yoga ashram. And I was really good friends with Shankarananda, and so I was over there, and Shankarananda was out, and his ex-wife, Girija, was sitting with me. We were having tea, and I said to her, I'm really having trouble with this celibacy thing, and I'd really like to know how you guys really personally tell me, how do you handle this? She looks at me and says, what? Are you celibate? I said, nobody's celibate here. What are you talking about? And, oh, okay. So I went home. I told everybody, I'm not celibate. It's over. And as a Swami, actually, technically, because of my many series of tantric initiations, that's finished. But even niftier is the way the Dashanami Swamis handle the whole discussion, which is the last thing. So we're in Ganesh Puri. It's May 15th. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. It's 115 out. I've been up for 4 straight days. I've done 750 fire rituals. And then we wade out into the middle of this, what is occasionally a river. And as I'm wading out through there, I'm putting my feet in the water and feeling my feet sink down into the muck. And as the bubbles come up and the stuff is bouncing off my legs, I realize they have waded me into the middle of the village sewer. Well, it didn't get weird until they start asking you to sip water. But at the end of all that, the very last thing you are called upon to renounce is renunciation itself. So, in fact, there is, even in sort of the more Brahmanical-based Orthodox traditions of India, recognition that ultimately we can only and ultimately become ourself. And artificial constraints at some point will absolutely go by the wayside. So, what we want to do is constantly create more contact, alignment, and flow. And in that experience of flow, the magic resides. And because of contact, alignment, and flow, unimaginable possibility becomes available to us. This is my personal experience.
Can you describe a little more what contact, alignment, and flow is specifically?
Well, contact is feeling, not thinking. So, contact is feeling your fingers, feeling your toes, feeling your body. That's one dimension of it. Feeling your breath, feeling where the breath distributes at its end point internally and how it distributes at its out point. That's another kind of contact. And each dimension, each time we make contact, say we start with our body, that contact will reveal a deeper and subtler aspect of our body until we have moved completely out of, well, no, what we've recognized is that this body is actually curtains of light. This body is curtains of light. And then we can shift our attention to the light itself. And making contact with the light starts to release the tensions that sort of hold us in the same place forever, going around in circles. And we start to find that we are breathing, really. Well, actually, what we really find is that we are not breathing, but rather being breathed. And holding the space of that breath, all the energy, all the junction points in the energy field open up. So contact is really just putting your attention someplace, and how you've had the intro a little bit, you know how I teach. I want you to take your attention to your breath, and then the channels and their junction points. Holding that space will release all the constraints, dissolve the boundaries, and reveal to you your own reality, which is you're not breathing, you're being breathed. And the breather is the goddess. Respiratory process is the one dynamic reality that interconnects every living being and all of space. Contact. So, okay, we're feeling. Then alignment. All you have to do is feel. Just take your attention there. Just like when we do yoga. We're trying to do it with some feeling. And, what happens there is that there is a natural alignment that exists in you, ever presently, slightly shifting in relationship to the tensions that you walk around in and the circumstance that you're in. But that alignment, if you hold that space, that alignment will naturally assert itself over and over and over again, wherever you are and whenever you are, if you call on it to do so. Just by taking your attention there. Alignment happens. In the biggest picture, the alignment between our body, our mind, and our heart, and the ultimate reality becomes complete. And in that case, there's a whole nother talk I can give you. And in that case, all of our karmas are immediately dissolved. Boom. So, Muriel, dear,
If they're dissolved, why do we still have to work?
because first of all, we come into this world packaged in a whole set of tensions that has nothing to do with us. I've used this, I try to take Indian terminology and turn it into words that I actually mean something to me. So one word that people throw around a lot is karma. We tend to think about karma just like we think about sin, and it's kind of really childish. If we do bad, we're going to be punished. If we do good, we're going to get brownie points. And if we limit the bad and do enough good, well, we get a get out of jail free card. Karma is not like that at all. Karma is the trauma and the disappointments of our ancestors that have been passed on to us and imprinted upon us most significantly by our parents. And it has nothing to do with us. It's their tensions and their parents' tensions and their parents' tensions forever. Well, I've been using this terminology for quite a while, and it's really interesting to me that in the last 2 years there have been a whole bunch of studies and articles that have come out about how trauma is genetically passed on from grandmother to granddaughters, and the father transmits his family's tensions to everybody directly. Poor Dad. He tried. We're literally buried in the disappointments of our ancestors and judging ourselves and each other for things that have nothing to do with us at all. Looking at people over a long period of time, I see people constantly reaching out, making choices based on the tensions of their parents and the nourishment and reaching out for the nourishment that their parents never had to give them. I see girls marrying guys who are just like their fathers, and guys marrying guys just like their fathers, and everybody, running around creating relationships with each other, a lot of the time, that have nothing to do with contact, alignment, and flow, and everything to do with trying to fill an empty space within ourselves that is absolutely unfillable on a human level. We live from the disappointments of our ancestors, and in failing to fill those spaces, we continuously judge ourselves. And those judgments become the basis for our hypocrisies, because we are constantly doing the same thing over and over again and telling ourselves we are not. Contact, alignment, and flow is the energy which lifts us out of that packaging and dissolves it so that we can become, well, the term is reborn. In the tantric tradition, initiation is essential, and the way in which initiation is viewed is as reborn. We get a new life and completely clear space in which to discover and express ourselves ever more fully. It's easier to say than to do. The disappointments of our ancestors, that's our karma. It's not about doing good and doing bad. Doing good and doing bad is completely, insinuated into the whole, tissue, the envelope of those disappointments that we are pervaded by. And it's only really training ourselves to stop our minds and open our hearts to establish contact, alignment, and flow from within ourselves to the entire extent of the field of our experience that releases us from that confusion and allows us to really be alive.